yeah, like for the longest time, there was this long-standing theory, peddled mostly by Europeans, because of course they fucking were, that it was sort of an accident. How these, you know, like they would send off a bunch of people, like a bunch of people would just like go off and like some of them would make it back, right? But like that's not actually how it happened at all. They knew exactly what they were doing. They didn't just like go off on, they didn't do what like European sailors had been doing, which is just like going off in a random direction and hoping that you find something over there. They actually were like, okay, cool, so we see, like, when we go out further afield from this one island, that birds fly in this direction, so there must be something out there that they're going to. Right? Like, it was this constant, like, reasoned, logical, scientific method. As it turns out, like, if you live in an environment for a really long time, which, boy do they have a long time, you can figure out where things are going to be. And, like, they weren't just, you know, wild men living in touch with nature and occasionally getting on a boat to disappear over the horizon. They had, like, empires and civilizations and kings and, you know, all the things that we view as, like, civilized. You know, like, there were civilizations out there not only surviving, but thriving. Until, some idiot in a powdered wig discovered them. Like, there's nothing really exceptional about human beings from any particular part of the world. Right, like, some group of people come up with a brand new technology first, and they talk about it to someone else. And then on the far side of the world, it's possible that technology develops completely independently of that one. That's how you get some of the weirdest things that human beings have done. If you're wondering where I'm coming to with this point, I think I've talked about it on this channel before, but like it was kind of a passing thought. But I wanted to dive deep on something I'd heard Hank Green say a while ago, which was like the importance of social technologies. Like, when you think of like a social technology, you know, you think of something like, right, the internet, but social technologies are also things like a church. Get a group of people together in the same room who all who can like communicate and work together, and you have nominal, the word nominal doing a little bit of work here, attitude that like there is a greater good to strive for, that is an extremely important social technology. Right? Pulls people together, makes them think about something bigger than themselves, which kind of helps fund big projects and keeps big projects alive. And then you have the weird, like, and you have your weird humans who get in and do weird things with that. Like the instinct to not cooperate is kind of weird in human beings, but because like we're more driven to cooperate than we are to compete. But when you get people competing, like when you get people with like a weirdness that makes them competitive instead, that actually turns out to be an advantage in a fully cooperative area. And then they get ahead for a little bit until the cooperators take over again. And you end up with all these weird social technologies to prevent the competitors from outcompeting the cooperators. Yeah, it's just all really cool. I love looking at like human history like that. Also, hey Crab.
Yeah.
You caught me waxing philosophical.
Ah.
I shall stop.
So you're awake then?
Yeah. How dare you?
But am I wrong?
No.
Yeah.
You're not.
How good is it?
That was pretty well.
Yeah. To dovetail off the departing conversation, I do enjoy at least the idea of friendly competition and competition in theory pushing parties to move further and higher and faster. That was how most of our writing technique. I've said this many times, but that's how most of our writing techniques started in the early days. Or it was just like, hey, let's see how far I can push this, and what I can do to make things interesting for the other person.
Yeah, that's between like we're not talking about like us and humanity at large. We're literally talking about the two of us there, just so people aren't confused.
Just us two.
Yeah. But like writing is a wild technology.
Mm.
God. History is so fucking fun. Like, especially like anthropology and stuff like that. Like, human history is that's nice. Solid gold hub. Human history is essentially a story of a group of people coming together and deciding to solve their problems. And the numerous problems that get created while solving other problems. Like, triumph and defeat, comedy and tragedy are all writ in in like seeing how different groups of disparate people organize themselves and make things work. And like more often than not, you find that the groups that do best are the groups that create more cohesion between themselves. And then ultimately they get messed up by a group who comes in and messes up the equilibrium, or a problem that messes up the equilibrium, because it's not always humans that create problems for other humans. And then the rebuilding around that particular equilibrium. Like they used to teach this, especially like in Europe, they used to treat this kind of version of history called the Great Man Theory.
Okay.
But which is like you have a problem, and that you have a big problem, and then a great hero comes along and sorts it all out. You know, but quite a lot of those is not. Quite a lot of those things are like it's a chicken and egg situation, because what came first, the human or the problem? Or like the group of people could not have created that. Like a specific group of people was required to create a Julius Caesar.
Yes.
To pick just one random like historical quote unquote hero. Right? Like you have to have a society of you have to have a cooperative society in place to produce that person.
Yes.
You have to have a system of like education in place. You have to have a system of like social technologies in place to create that person. And then sometimes you end up with situations where this one person completely fucks everything and becomes the problem.
Mm-hmm.
And it's this weird like up and down dance. If you're wondering what inspired me to think about all of this stuff, it was because we were at Anthrocon. And I find that the furry community, or the, I guess, Therian community, to give it its more modern name that's like all-inclusive, I guess. Unless Therian are a different thing, in which case someone's going to have to message me and tell me, hey, that's a different thing altogether. But this, this weird technology, social technology that's brought like everyone together, like a bunch of completely disparate groups together in this one combined interest, and now has like this strange function of having, of like almost being the least secret society to ever exist.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like you've got groups of furries who are at all levels of everything in all countries.
I'm currently looking up the difference between Therians and furries, because Therian is something new. I have not heard of such a thing.
Yeah, I had heard it. This is like where I kind of need to be fact checked, because
Okay.
I'd heard people using it interchangeably, but also like as a kind of collection between like, you know, fur, lizard, feather, whatever.
Mm-hmm. So it seems to be. Well, I mean, we could talk about this off stream, if you like.
Why is it bad?
No, but it's like,
No, publicly fact check me. Let's go.
okay.
I need
So
to know if I'm wrong.
So apparently, at least what I'm seeing, based on a quick little bit of research and an article that's saying, that's explaining both sides of it. Therians are people who identify with animals but know themselves. They, as I'm seeing it, they what is it? They feel an animal is part of who they are. Just as a person, they don't they don't choose and alter it. But furries are fans of enjoy animals with human traits. So it's people looking at or people enjoying animals as distinct separate entities and finding and identifying features of themselves in animals versus furries who usually anthropomorphize animals and use that as a way to like explore a little bit more of themselves.
At the risk of doubling down, I fail to see a distinction.
No, I think it's from what I'm seeing.
Because, like, by having an animal be part of a human persona, that's just anthropomorphizing an animal, right? Because animals and humans have very different, like, first of all, like, there's so many different types of animals on that spectrum.
Mhm.
And like, even among like our closest relatives, they have a completely different like way of seeing the world than we do.
Yeah.
Not just because our brains are different, but also because like our kind of hierarchies and places are different, right? Like, if you were to see the world through an octopus's eyes, you wouldn't recognize it.
Okay.
You know, if you were to see the world through a dog's eyes, you'd barely recognize it. Everything would be extremely different and make like a completely different amount of sense to you. So like I don't see the difference between anthropomorphizing an animal and seeing yourself as an animal, because your perspective will still be human. Like, you can't have an animal perspective on the world because you're not built that way.
So the way I'm seeing it and the way I'm at least interpreting and intuiting it is a Therian sees a wolf and says, "This is something that I identify with. This group dynamic, this camaraderie, this desire to be strong and self-sufficient." Whereas, at least according to this, the idea is a furry will take that and generally put human character. They will put their human characteristics onto the animal, whereas the Therian puts the animal characteristics into themselves. So I think it's the direction of where attributes are being applied.
I guess. No, okay, I see that.
Yeah.
But like, that still makes no. To me,
It's
that
also
makes very little sense, because you're like, no human understands the way an animal's brain works.
right.
Right? Like, we have basic ideas of how that psychology works, like how certain animals think, but like, as soon as you apply that trait to a human template, all bets are off.
Yeah.
Like, you talk about like the wolf dynamics, but like, for the longest time we've had group dynamics completely backwards, much to the chagrin of the person who originally wrote the paper.
Yeah.
But like, not only that, but you know, so when you talk about like people like one particular group of Therians, because I'm also not assuming they're a monolith, identifying with wolves as having an alpha, beta, omega dynamic, which is just completely not true. They're not really taking they're not really taking a wolf's idea of what a wolf is. They're taking a human's flawed idea of what a wolf is and applying it to themselves. So they're not really doing they're doing it wrong.
But they're not putting pants on a wolf.
Ah, okay. Well, I mean, if we're just putting pants, if it's between like whether the wolf has pants on it or not, I guess there's that.
Yeah.
Okay, that helps me understand the distinction a lot better.
Yeah. There's also at least the posit here that There's also the posit that, and this one I'm not sure how much I agree with it, is there's more a spiritual connection, quote unquote, with between Etherian and their chosen animal, I suppose. And whereas a furry has their persona that can change, but it is mostly used as a vehicle to enter the furry community. Now, I don't know how accurate that is because some will put
Boy,
much more of them. Yeah, some people will put much more of themselves into their personas
yeah.
and use that as a way to explore themselves and expand their own understanding of themselves, to experiment with different things.
Just talking about the furries that like I know, like in real life, this feels like an extremely false binary.
Yeah. I feel more that the idea of wolves with pants is a better better distinction.
Yeah, like
Uh, what's the word? Better distinction bit.
yeah,
That, yeah. Now that is just based off of
I
what
think
I'm
this is
seeing.
I think this is
Yeah.
a same like where do you cut the salami discussion as when our when our male nipples when do male nipples become ordinary male nipples become obscene female nipples for folks
Yeah.
who are transitioning. Like I feel like this is a spectrum that has like infinities within it. I do not feel
Yeah.
I like so I am comfortable saying that not only am I wrong here, that I don't have any idea what I'm talking about,
Yeah.
but I
I
don't
don't
know that
either.
anyone does.
Yeah.
So I'm going to do the sensible thing and just neatly sidestep it and not talk about it.
The adult solution.
Yeah, the adult solution is to throw your arms up in the air, say I don't know, and wait for the smarter people to sort it out. Because I
Yeah.
promise that there are people who are thinking about this far more than I am.
Yeah. I have other things on my mind,
Hmm.
for better and worse.
Like, I'm not a psychologist. I'm certainly not an anthropologist. I just have like, I'm an enthusiastic amateur in either one.
I don't even play one on TV.
Yeah.
Thank
there's
God.
Materium over here. I wonder what this was. Oh, this is cool. I didn't notice this. Oh, I didn't
Bless
get
you.
to the switch in time. Ow.
You're not supposed to hold that shit in, you know.
It really doesn't matter either way. The human body is leaking full of holes. It'll escape somewhere. But,
It will bubble up and go into your brain.
yeah, I know. But it was that I tried to keep it from happening just long enough that it hurt when it came out. Ugh. So yeah, we should switch topics because we've reached a dead end.
Essentially, yeah.
I do like the furry community though, as a like wherever they are on the furry Therian spectrum, if it is a spectrum.
People who like things are neat.
Who like things are really neat. People who are passionate about things are really neat. I like to surround myself with people who are smarter than I am in at least one subject.
Oh yeah. I never want to be the smartest person in the room. Thankfully, I rarely am.
I'll be the smartest person in a room for like a particular like mastermind subject. I'll just be like, "Yep, this is my category. Stand back, plebeians. Allow me." To like when I talk about certain things, but like, yeah, it's
Yeah.
good to have.
It's good to be self-aware of your strengths
It's good to be
and
self-aware
abilities.
of like when you're like, I don't know what I'm talking about, and I need to shut the fuck up and let the adults talk.
Mm.
Ooh, hold on. I have an idea. I've had I've had an apostrophe epiphany. Lightning has just
No.
struck my brain. It hurt. Try and stop me, Smee. Don't you dare try and stop me, Smee. Don't you dare try and stop me. Try and stop me. Smee, try and stop me.
Mm.
I'm in it. I'm committing suicide, Smee.
Okay. Mm.
Uh.
I'm looking back in chat at the coconut discussion and we're trying to think of other situations that I've heard of things that have either accidentally or through means not of their own power found their way into different ecosystems. The only one that's really coming to mind is the lighthouse keeper with his cat.
Oh yeah. Whoops.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh god. So much of like the history of islands is, and then some idiot brought a cat with him,
Yeah.
or and
Well,
then some
suddenly.
idiot brought a rabbit to eat.
The utter fool decided, let's see. Let me bring Mr. Snuffles.
Yeah, and then this group of idiots decided that they were like, their tummy was getting the rumblies that only rabbits could satisfy. Which like is not a stupid idea. Speaking as somebody who loves rabbits a lot, they're relatively calorie dense as long as they're not the only thing you're eating. They're also pretty nutritious, and they breed like rabbits, so you can always have more. The problem is that rabbits do this thing rabbits have this thing they like to do called burrowing. And
Yes.
once they burrow out of the environment you've put them in, you're a bit fucked, because now they're everywhere.
I heard somewhere that it was actually Roman soldiers who brought rabbits over to, I think it was England, and
Yep.
tried to teach them how to burrow. Which the idea is just very silly to me. I have no idea if it's at all accurate, and I don't know how I can
Try to teach the
verify
rabbits
that.
how to burrow.
Yeah.
That's just something that rabbits do.
Oh, but the Legionnaires taught them or something.
I
know. It sounded silly.
I ask that you go onto Wikipedia and fact check yourself this second.
I will fact check myself.
Because if that's true, holy shit, that's funny. If it's as I suspect not true, then like that's a very good story. But we should really make sure that we're not. The thing about having a platform is you
Not
have to be
spread, yeah.
responsible with the information you say. Because even if a fact sounds fun, You need to make sure that you're saying, for the people at the back, that, no, that's not true, I've lied to you. But isn't it a good story? Which is fine.
Why? Aside from family,
In fact, stand back, I'm getting on my soapbox. So, it is perfectly acceptable for you to share a fun fact, even if you have a platform, and you're like, this is an interesting thing I've heard. But then you have to take responsibility to say, that is apocryphal, meaning it might be true, but there's no evidence to prove it. Or, this is a, or, like, you have to present evidence if a theory has been debunked by, like, study or simple common fucking sense. You have to, like, actually say out loud, hey, by the way, I lied to you. Yeah. This is the fun story. Like, you can tell, like, the average listener or the average listener to your podcast, or the average, like, consumer of your media, will understand that the Earth is not flat. They will also understand that Goldilocks and the Three Bears is a story, and they will also understand that most of the time that human beings have actually been to the moon. The problem is, if you tell all of these things together, if you have someone on, say, your podcast, and you have someone talking about, like, flat Earth theory next to, like, somebody talking about astrophysics, you've legitimized one and delegitimized the other and brought them into the same level, which is an extremely stupid and dangerous thing to do, because you've just planted in your audience's head, the audience of, I don't know, your podcast, that you've labeled as an experience, that these two things should be taken as seriously as the other. And say you have somebody on this podcast that, I don't know, has
yeah, I can find nothing.
That's not Oh, okay, you can't find anything to back that up.
Nope. Apparently it's just a thing I heard. Just a funny thing.
Funny thing. Considering that, like, Lagomorph burrowing is just a thing that they do in almost all cases. There's always one weirdo that's different. I would assume that the Roman legionnaires did not teach them that. But doesn't it make for a funny story?
Yes.
Yeah. Say you have somebody who's listening to your podcast or your show or your experience and doesn't understand the difference between, like, doesn't have an education that's taught them one thing about another. You've accidentally created a stupid person. Cool. Oh, I need more. To make 20 more of those. You know what? If you want to have a podcast or a show or an experience, and you want to have people from everywhere across the aisle, I thoroughly encourage you to do so, provided that you don't, like, conflate one with another, and that you state at the top and bottom of your show, podcast, or experience that this is a fringe theory, or this has been wildly debunked.
Okay.
Sorry, I had to go off on a particular
Yep, I understand.
misinformation peddler. Yeah, you're responsible for the intelligence of your audience.
I appear to have gotten you worked up. I apologize.
No, I'm not actually worked up. The opportunity to clown on Joe Rogan presented itself.
Yep.
And I enjoy clowning on Joe Rogan. Also, like, the difference between, like, information and misinformation is something that I've always been weird about ever since I was a teeny tiny child. Don't tell lies. Sorry, did I upset you?
No, you're good.
Did I concern you?
No.
Sounds like there's more to that sentence.
After a while, soapboxing gets tiring for me to listen to.
Oh, okay.
On either side.
Come over and kick my soapbox out from underneath me.
Basically,
It's like,
take it,
dial it back.
pick you up, set you down, take the soapbox, put it in the closet. It's like, okay, we're done. I understand. However, yeah,
This is my show.
Right.
I decide when the
Uh-huh.
soapbox comes out.
I decide what can and cannot be a soapbox.
And this, ladies and gentlemen, is why it's important to keep people around you that keep you honest and sane.
Mm.
Make
I wouldn't go that far.
Make sure that you have a. Make sure that you have your own crab goddess to
Oh God.
poke you in the side of the head and be like, "Hey, honey, you're scaring the hose away."
Exactly. You're frightening the hose. Please leave. Let the hose be. They understand.
I had to explain to my I had to explain to my therapist what scaring the hose means.
That must have been an interesting look on their face.
It was very funny.
Yeah.
Also, I calculated for 10, not the 20 I actually need. Shit. It's fine. Oh, but I'm in backwards. Also, people used to make fun of me for being passionate about the truth.
Hmm. The truth, Spider-Man.
Well, like, someone, like, used to make fun of me by, being like, "Hey, Dead Name, did you know that, aspartame causes cancer?" Because they knew I couldn't resist, like, talking about why that's not fucking true. And then they would laugh at, they would laugh and be like, "Man, you're so easy. You know no one actually believes that, right?" And here we are in 2024. So if I get a little fucking wound up when people tell lies and then pretend that no one will believe them.
Right, that's fair.
Rather vexes me.
Understandably.
Like a lot of things in my life, it was motivated by anger.
Your spite.
Yeah. It's like, not only are you wrong, but I can prove you're wrong. Well, I can talk louder. Fuck you! God, yeah, the biggest like angry switch I used to have and no longer have would be when somebody would tell me that I didn't know what I was talking about.
Okay.
And then I would immediately destroy my own argument by yelling at them and looking like a clown.
That is why I know I cannot be, as much as I enjoyed the idea of being in debates, I realize that I am very emotional very easily, and I have a hard time keeping myself on track and not devolving into angry personal attacks against the person who is pissing me off.
Yeah, it's really rough when you're dealing with people who use a lot of the right-wing playbook as well.
Mm.
You know, like, you know, when people say, you know, why aren't you responding to this criticism? It's like, you are assuming straight out the gate that the criticism is worth responding to.
Yes.
Or that, like, it's actually criticism and not just, like, insults disguised as criticism. Like, one of my favorite slash least favorite talking points that I've heard used that way is the whole DEI argument. And you can't win by arguing against the DEI argument. By being like, you know, these people aren't, you know, these people weren't DEI hires. Because that's not the root of their argument. The root of their argument, which you can very quickly head off if you know what you're doing, is, are you saying that this would be much better done by a white man? You assume that all of these tasks are better performed by a white man. And then, like, because you're not trying to, like, because most often you're not trying to change the mind of the person you're talking to. Because an interlocutor in a debate, even in a structured debate, is there to defend the point to the best of their ability. Yes. You are never trying to change the mind of your interlocutor. You are attempting to change the mind of the judges, the people who are listening on. Which is why debate is a very difficult skill to get right, because the initial impulse is that you're trying to convince the person across the aisle from you, and that's not how it works at all. Just like in, you know, in a like in an actual court of law, you're not trying to convince your opposition lawyer that they're wrong. You're trying to convince the jury that the opposition is wrong. So personal attacks don't really tend to work. And getting frothed up makes you look bad in front of the jury.
Yeah.
Also an important thing about, like, structured debate is it's important to concede a point when you know you've lost. It's important. You have to learn how to lose, and that's, like, so fucking hard. I can't do it. Debate skill is a extremely important and very difficult skill, and very few people can do it.
I am aware of some of my limits as a person, for better or worse.
Also, educating yourself on things like logical fallacies is always useful. Even though you have to, like, even fallacies are careful because pointing out that an argument contains a fallacy is itself a fallacy.
Yeah. So what's the goal with the rest of this construction?
So this construction is about maybe about half done, maybe 2/3 done. Because now what I'm building in is the pipe infrastructure, which has to be on a whole floor of its own. I'm also
Okay.
building in inspection gantries and things like that, so that you can like get into and look around these intervening areas. I also have to get hooked together the infrastructure to get power out of this thing. Because the way that it should work is that there are 2 power switches. One that takes power directly out of the system, and one that puts power through the capacitors, and then out of the system. And having those power switches in place means that essentially you can shut, if we have like a major emergency, or we can shut down certain parts of it while still maintaining a power output.
Okay.
Because the load balancing is something that like you don't generally have to do after you've got oil power plants, but it's still something to keep in the back of the mind. That there is going to be a point at which you will exceed your power usage, or you exceed your power output. This structure is going to more than double our current output.
Okay.
Our current output is something like 5,000 megawatts a minute. That's total across all of our power plants. This outputs 7 gigawatts per minute.
Okay.
So we have 5 gigawatts currently. We'll have 12 after this is up. And also, the reason I've built all these capacitor farms in here is because these will maintain a charge, so that even if we spike above our power usage, there will still be a system of generators pumping to. Oh, sorry, there'll still be a set of capacitors discharging to offset that imbalance.
Okay.
And the way I have it calculated, because like there's time until full, is that these will essentially be outputting 20, 40, 60, 80 times 100, 8,000. These will be outputting 8,000 gigawatts a minute if there is ever an interruption in fuel process.
Okay.
For as long as they last.
Neat.
Right. Now we come to build our top floor. Ow. Did you hear the donk?
I didn't. On screen or in your meat space?
On screen.
I did not. No.
I flew into a window and there was a donk.
Bonk. No, I have the actual stream tab muted so that I'm not hearing you twice.
Ah, that's fair. How's your writing going?
I made some solid progress. Let's see.
You want to tell people what it is you're working on?
Sure. First I'm just trying to see. I don't think I'm checking on my phone and I can't actually check page numbers there. But
Crab is working on an Adzi and Jane property that they have full rights over.
yeah. So I am currently rewriting, and I'm currently doing rewrites for some, I suppose, backstory is the way to put it. Some background canon that will eventually become set canon in the USXW universe. And I am doing, just tightening up some of the writing, trying to make it flow a little better. Taking it from first draft to polished second draft. Or second draft to polished third draft. So.
It's really good.
Yeah.
In my humble opinion. I help write some of it, but like, Crab is the mastermind behind like actually getting in all my disparate ideas into one cohesive thing.
I can somewhat interpret Adzi, or interpret what people are trying to say. Sometimes, even though I will frequently have trouble communicating my own ideas. Which is why I prefer writing as a medium for communication rather than actually speaking, because when I speak, generally it's either I take extended pauses to figure out what I'm saying next, or it's something that I could probably say without even thinking because I've practiced it over and over in my head. Like, I will have a script written out in my head. It is something that I have rehearsed and done over and over. So
this is a thing that you and Jane have in common, which must mean like talking to me is unendingly frustrating because I can't do that. I think faster than I type, and I find typing a extremely inefficient way of converting information.
yeah.
So like by the time I get to the thought I want to make on when typing, I'm already like way ahead of that point in my own head. Whereas when I'm speaking, I'm just a little behind.
Yeah.
Like I can transfer so much more information by speaking.
I understand that.
Yeah.
I can transfer more information by speaking, and if I absolutely go off, then my mouth will move much faster than my brain actually does. However, it's also very likely that a lot of it will become emotional or off the cuff or not even very thought through. And it will be things like... It will be things that ultimately might hurt what I'm trying to say, or hinder it, I suppose would be better. One example that I can immediately think of is absolutely going off on one of my managers for being fairly sexist towards towards at least a couple of our female employees, in particular one who was, to be fair, not too great person to be around, occasionally miserable, but often was doing her best, as far as I could see. And I spent a solid 3 minutes barely stopping to breathe, going off saying, "Hey, you're being a piece of shit." So, and that one I barely thought about. So that could also be referring back to the script where it's thoughts that I've had and muddled over and worked out and refined a little bit more before actually presenting them in spoken form. Whereas if I'm writing, God bless whoever made spell check. Like I can sit and stare at a sentence until it makes sense. Or if I stare at it and it doesn't make sense, then I can work it, and massage it, and make it so I can be content with what I'm trying to communicate.
Yeah.
But in a conversation, I don't have the 5 minutes to communicate what I want to say before the topic generally switches or moves on.
That's fair.
Yes.
I mean, like, bold of you to assume that I am always thinking about everything that comes out of my mouth, because, as Jane will say, I've definitely burned a bridge or three by not taking a moment to calm down before I speak.
Yeah.
I'm trying to get better at that.
Yeah. I love you, but I can also see that, yes.
Yeah. I want to talk about where I absolutely failed to be the bigger person in the room.
Yeah.
Because I think it's important that people understand that I'm not perfect, and I fuck up big time sometimes.
Yeah.
There was a webcomic. There was a webcomic collective that we were like thinking about joining called Spider Forest, and they have a short window every year where they let people like try out essentially, and basically they let a few webcomics into their collective a year. And after we were denied, and after a lot of other comics that I really liked were denied, and like 2 got in, I went and sought a bit of constructive criticism. And while I was like talking and like, to be fair, at the initial point that the criticism of the thing being discussed about like how it wasn't good enough to get in, I was actually being receptive and like talking about how, you know, like, well, here's why we came to this decision, here's why we do this, and yeah, the art is a little inconsistent because I just let Jane learn and grow as an artist, and, you know, don't expect her to be perfect right out the gate, because, you know, we're both kind of doing this as we go along. And one of the admins took my replying to criticism in a kind of short and succinct way, instead of like as being that I was getting upset and emotional. And if there's any way to make me get upset and emotional, it's to accuse me of being upset and emotional when I'm not.
Yeah.
And so this turned into a self-fulfilling prophecy. Because as I was getting pissed off, upset, and emotional, now that someone had accused me of doing so, which, you know, does not reflect great on me, but this is not going to be a story where I come out of it looking good, and I would like people to remember that I'm not telling this story to justify my actions. I'm telling this story to point out that I fuck up too. So I don't want anybody coming out in the comments being like, you know what, you did the right thing. Like, if you believe that sincerely, please keep it to yourself. But like, I realized that what was being offered by Spider Forest at the time was basically nothing. You were being like added to their kind of special club. um, to get your webcomic, you know, on their mailing list. And there were a lot of things that I noticed had not been followed by some of the like current graduates of that program. You know, some of the things that were like actively up there, and that made me even more pissed off. And so I went on a tirade on their forums, which is something you should never fucking do. Don't do that. About like how this whole process was basically building a boys' club, and like built like extremely elitist, and that I hated it, which promptly got us banned. Now, I also had a discussion with one of the admins, where they essentially came out and said that, you know, they are not looking for, they want to make sure that this is not something that just anyone can join. You know, they only do tryouts once a year to make sure that only the best comics get in. And to which my response was, well, if you're only bringing in people once a year and you're only bringing in new talent, you're not staying ahead of the industry. You are, you're creating an echo chamber because you're not actually adding any new ideas or new techniques to your repertoire, which they respectfully said they disagreed to. And I did the extremely stupid and extremely not cool thing of copying that conversation and pasting it publicly. Yeah, don't do that either. Don't do that. Don't be that asshole. Don't be like me. Don't make that kind of mistake. And so, it doesn't matter what Spider Forest could have offered us, because we've now completely disqualified ourselves from it. And after I had... And all of this happened over the course of one evening, because I made the mistake of not disengaging, not just losing the argument, and coming back another time.
Yeah.
Right? So, yeah. Two reasons I want to tell that story. One, to like publicly apologize, although I'm not going to be seeking seeking membership of Spider Forest again, because frankly I don't deserve to be there. And to sort of let people know that, yeah, I am not perfect, and I will always strive to be better.
Yes.
And if you're going to put me on a pedestal, a reminder that that pedestal is going to be made out of the worst kind of concrete. I will always try my best. I will always come up short of trying my best. Does that qualify as a soapbox? Do you need to kick it out from under me?
No, I think you're good.
Okay.
That is a good button on it.
Yeah.
So.